Fysh, who is one of the members of Jacob Rees-Mogg's European Research Group and also one of those people who's been working on so-called alternative arrangements to the backstop, which Brexiteers love to hate. Morning to you, Mr. Fysh.
Morning, Nick.
What is your advice to the Prime Minister this morning?
Well, we need to keep calm, we need to stay positive and focus on the preparations we're making for any eventuality. We need to put text on the table that could make a deal acceptable and talk to the EU about the detail of the arrangements we'll need to have in place in case we can't reach a withdrawal agreement.
Put text on the table. Now, what some people are saying is if today ends with no real progress, and of course there may be some progress in the years to come, but if it doesn't, that the Prime Minister should come up with a motion that says, look, this is what the House of Commons could back if only you in the EU would give it to us. Is that what you propose, that she should put that to MPs tomorrow?
Well, we've already had a vote in Parliament where we showed what there is a majority for. The Brady Amendment talked about replacing the backstop with alternative arrangements, and that really is all the evidence that the EU should require. I think it would be worth reiterating that and actually putting the detail of the proposals which we worked up with the government over recent weeks on the table so that the EU could be fully aware and discuss what it was exactly we were proposing. I was in Brussels last week and I'm not sure that they have in fact had that information from the government yet.
You don't believe the government has tabled the alternative arrangements, you mean?
Not in detail.
Now, there's a reason for that, though, isn't there? What I hear in Westminster, what I've heard in Brussels as well, is people say, look, one day there may indeed be alternatives to the backstop. The technology might exist, the agreements might exist, but the idea that all of that will be settled in a matter of days is for the birds.
Well, the thing is that is where the majority in Parliament is for a deal, for a withdrawal agreement.
But there can be, forgive me, Mr. Fysh, there can be a majority for the moon being made of cheese. It doesn't matter if it's not going to happen and Brussels aren't going to back it. It's irrelevant, isn't it?
Well, what we know about the draft withdrawal agreement that's been proposed is it rests on a future of a customs union, which it's very clear from my discussions with different people in Brussels last week, is the ambition of the EU through the withdrawal agreement and any future negotiations. So the price of us doing anything else as a nation would be to leave Northern Ireland in a separate relationship which was a customs union with the EU, and that's just not acceptable. So we need to talk about things which are acceptable.
Now, some, including yourself, see this as sort of an EU plot. In a recent article, you've talked about a coercive, a controlling relationship with Brussels. You've talked about the government not capitulating to the EU. In the EU, wouldn't they say this is just a statement of, forgive the phrase, the bleeding obvious, which is if you have different customs rules on both sides, on two sides of a border, you inevitably have a border. If Northern Ireland has different rules, in other words, to the Republic of Ireland, there will have to be some form of border.
You inevitably have to administer the differences of the jurisdiction, but that doesn't mean that there has to be a hard border and a traditional border which everybody imagines includes customs officers and border posts on the border itself. All of these administrative facilities can take place away from the border and not involve physical inspection at the border, which is the main concern.
But given this hasn't been tabled by the government, you argue, given that Brussels are dismissive of it, the truth is you and people like you are going to vote against pretty much whatever Theresa May tables, aren't you?
Well, if the deal comes back completely unamended, then I will vote against that.
So what do you say to Michael Gove today?
It's not in the national interest.
Forgive me. What do you say to Michael Gove, who led the Leaflet campaign, as you know, and says that leaving without a deal would not, repeat, not honour the commitment made to voters ahead of that referendum? That was never what was put to the electorate.
Not leaving with a withdrawal agreement does not mean that we will not be looking to have a deal and a good relationship with the EU.
Well, technically, that's literally what it means, isn't it? We would not have a divorce agreement. We would not have a withdrawal agreement. We would not, quote, have a deal.
The government has been undertaking massive preparations. I've been working with HMRC on a few tweaks to make sure that our borders are going to run efficiently. We can use the transit system to make sure that goods can get through Calais without having to be checked there and can be cleared inland wherever they are going to.
Forgive me, Mr. Fysh, you're talking about two different things, aren't they?
The practical things are what we need to focus on, and not get so worried about the high-level arguments and personalities.
It's you having the semantic argument. I said we'd be leaving without a deal. What you're saying, and that's perfectly reasonable, is that we can have contingency plans, we can make practical arrangements at borders and all the rest of it. We would still be tearing up a deal with our principal trading partner and not replacing it with anything at all.
Well, we already know that the preparations on the EU side are well advanced. They've made unilateral commitments on aviation and vehicle registration. Aerospace parts are going to be allowed in.
Would you accept, Mr. Fysh, that is not the same as a deal?
Well, it is an arrangement which
it's not
can
a deal.
work. Well, it is if it's a reciprocal arrangement that we agree to.
Well, it's not a deal that replaces all our existing trading and other relationship with the EU.
There are
it's a series of contingency
There are
plans.
different ways of having arrangements at our borders which can work very efficiently and in the interests of both sides while we negotiate the deeper and very positive but balanced relationship between two independent jurisdictions that I think everybody wants to see in the longer term.
Marcus Fysh, thank you for joining us.
Pleasure.